The music stopped. Every guest turned towards the entrance. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above a ballroom filled with wealthy families, famous business owners, and elegantly dressed friends waiting for the maid of honor to arrive. Instead of walking in beside a handsome businessman or a successful lawyer, Naomi Williams entered the wedding holding hands with a homeless man whose worn boots were covered in dust, whose faded jacket had been stitched together several times, and whose old duffel bag rested over one shoulder. The whispers began instantly. Some guests laughed. Others reached for their phones to record the embarrassing moment. Naomi's older sister, the bride, felt her face burn with anger. "You actually brought him?" she shouted loud enough for everyone to hear. The homeless man lowered his head, preparing to leave before causing more trouble. But Naomi tightened her grip on his hand and calmly replied, "He's the only man here who has never pretended to love me for what I own." Nobody understood what she meant. Within the next hour, however, the glamorous wedding would become the most unforgettable event anyone had ever witnessed, and the truth about the homeless stranger would change every life in that ballroom forever. For most of her life, Naomi Williams lived in the shadow of her older sister, Vanessa. Vanessa was beautiful, confident, popular, and determined to marry into wealth. Their parents praised Vanessa for her ambition, while constantly reminding Naomi that she was too kind for her own good. Naomi worked as a children's librarian, earning an ordinary salary and spending her weekends reading stories to children at local shelters instead of attending luxury parties. She believed kindness mattered more than status, but her family considered that a weakness. Every family dinner became another opportunity for Vanessa to compare Naomi with successful men and women who drove expensive cars and wore designer clothes. Whenever Naomi mentioned helping someone in need, Vanessa rolled her eyes and joked that kindness never paid the bills. Despite the constant criticism, Naomi refused to change. She quietly volunteered, donated part of every paycheck to local charities, and treated strangers with the same respect she gave close friends. Deep inside, however, the endless comparisons left painful scars. She longed for the day someone would value her heart, instead of judging her by the people she dated or the money she earned. 6 months before the wedding, Vanessa announced her engagement to a wealthy property developer named Richard. Their wedding quickly became the talk of the city because no expense was spared. A luxury hotel ballroom, celebrity chef, live orchestra, imported flowers, and hundreds of influential guests were all booked months in advance. Then Vanessa delivered one final condition to Naomi. "If you're coming to my wedding," she said with a smirk, "don't embarrass me by showing up alone again. Bring a respectable boyfriend, or don't come at all." The words stung. Naomi had recently ended a relationship after discovering her boyfriend had secretly borrowed money from her while seeing someone else. She had no interest in rushing into another relationship just to impress anyone. Yet every phone call from her sister repeated the same demand. Friends tried introducing her to strangers through dating apps, blind dates, and social events, but every conversation felt forced. Some men only cared about her appearance. Others wanted someone with a higher-paying career. As the wedding approached, Naomi accepted that she would probably attend alone and endure another day of humiliation. One rainy afternoon, only 3 weeks before the ceremony, Naomi stopped beneath an old railway bridge after noticing a homeless man struggling to protect a box of soaked books from the rain. Instead of asking for money, he carefully dried each book with the sleeve of his jacket. Curious, Naomi walked over and offered him her umbrella. The man smiled warmly and thanked her. His name was Malcolm Carter. Before losing his home, Malcolm had worked as a history teacher. A serious illness, medical debt, and the loss of his wife had slowly taken everything he owned. Yet despite sleeping in shelters and surviving on small donations, he still spent his free time rescuing abandoned books because, as he quietly explained, stories helped me survive my darkest days. I can't bear seeing them thrown away. Naomi sat beside him for nearly an hour listening to his incredible knowledge of literature, music, science, and history. She laughed more during that conversation than she had in months. Before leaving, she brought Malcolm a hot meal and promised to visit again. Over the following weeks, their friendship grew stronger. Naomi learned Malcolm secretly tutored struggling teenagers for free at the local shelter, repaired broken bicycles for children, and shared whatever little food he received with older homeless residents who were too sick to queue for meals. He never complained about his circumstances. Instead, he constantly encouraged others not to lose hope. Naomi began to realize that the richest person she had ever met owned almost nothing. The evening before the wedding, Malcolm noticed Naomi seemed unusually quiet. After gently asking what was wrong, she admitted everything about her sister's ultimatum. Malcolm smiled kindly and jokingly said, "Well, if all she wants is someone beside you, I suppose I could wear my cleanest jacket." Naomi laughed for the first time all day. Then an unexpected idea appeared. "Would you really come?" she asked. Malcolm hesitated before agreeing, but only if he wouldn't cause embarrassment. Naomi answered with complete sincerity, "You've shown me more respect in 3 weeks than most people have shown me in years." The next afternoon they arrived together. The luxury cars, expensive dresses, and glittering decorations made Malcolm visibly uncomfortable. He quietly suggested waiting outside until the ceremony started, but Naomi refused to let go of his hand. As they entered the ballroom, conversation stopped almost instantly. Guests stared. Some laughed openly. Others whispered insults they assumed Malcolm couldn't hear. Vanessa marched across the room in disbelief. "You've completely ruined my wedding," she shouted. Richard attempted to calm everyone, but the tension only grew worse. Malcolm apologized and turned towards the exit, believing he was the problem. Naomi stopped him. Looking directly at her sister, she said, "The only embarrassing thing here is how quickly people judge someone they've never spoken to." The room fell silent. Just then, an elderly gentleman entered the ballroom surrounded by several executives. Many guests immediately recognized him as Charles Bennett, founder of one of the country's largest publishing companies and one of the most respected philanthropists in the nation. Instead of greeting the bride and groom first, Charles hurried directly towards Malcolm. To everyone's astonishment, the elderly businessman embraced the homeless man with tears in his eyes. "I've been searching everywhere for you," he said. Confused whispers spread across the room. Charles turned to the guests and explained that Malcolm had once been his university professor decades earlier. When Charles had lost both parents as a teenager, Malcolm secretly paid his tuition, bought his textbooks, and encouraged him never to give up. "Without this man," Charles announced emotionally, "none of my success would exist today." The ballroom became completely silent. Charles then revealed something nobody expected. For years he had tried to locate Malcolm after learning about his financial struggles, hoping to repay the kindness that had changed his life. Unfortunately, Malcolm had disappeared after his wife's illness. Charles immediately announced that he had already arranged a fully furnished home for Malcolm, complete medical care, and a permanent position leading literacy programs for disadvantaged children through his charitable foundation. Guests who had mocked Malcolm moments earlier lowered their eyes in shame. Vanessa stood frozen, unable to speak. Richard quietly admitted that he had judged Malcolm without knowing anything about him. One by one, several guests approached to apologize personally. Malcolm accepted every apology with grace, proving once again that dignity is never measured by wealth. As the reception continued, the atmosphere transformed completely. Instead of talking about luxury decorations or expensive jewelry, guests gathered around Malcolm listening to stories of courage, resilience, and hope. Children followed him around the dance floor because he made every conversation feel important. Naomi watched proudly, realizing that bringing Malcolm had become the greatest decision of her life. Months later, Malcolm settled into his new home, continued teaching children, and rebuilt his life one step at a time. Naomi and Malcolm remained close friends, supporting each other through every challenge. Over time, that friendship slowly grew into a relationship built on honesty, compassion, laughter, and mutual respect rather than appearances or money. Their story inspired thousands of people across the city to volunteer, donate books, and support homeless outreach programs. What had begun as an attempt to avoid family embarrassment became a movement reminding everyone that character is revealed not by what someone owns, but by how they treat others when nobody is watching. Years later, whenever people asked Naomi what possessed her to bring a homeless man to her sister's glamorous wedding, she simply smiled and answered, "Because everyone else was looking for someone impressive. I was looking for someone good." The wedding photographs that once seemed destined to capture an embarrassing family scandal instead became treasured reminders that one courageous decision can change countless lives. Vanessa eventually apologized sincerely and rebuilt her relationship with her sister, admitting that she had spent years chasing status while overlooking genuine character. Malcolm often told children at his literacy center that the greatest gift anyone could receive was not fame, fortune, or success, but someone willing to stand beside them when the whole world walked away. And that unforgettable wedding became proof that the strongest relationships are never built on appearances. They are built on kindness, trust, and the courage to see the worth in someone long before everyone else does.